In 1995, in the small southern Puerto Rican town of Canavanas, dawn on March 14th was unusually quiet. No roosters crowed, no sheep bleated. When daylight came, the farmer discovered something he would never be able to comprehend for the rest of his life. 8 of his sheep lay dead on the ground. Their bodies were completely intact, showing no signs of being mauled or bitten by any predator. The only marks were 2 precise puncture wounds on their necks, right at the jugular vein. And the most chilling part, every single sheep had been completely drained of blood. Even more disturbing, there were no signs of struggle anywhere in the pen. It was as if some calm, efficient killer had used 2 thin, sharp spikes to drain them, as effortlessly as we might sip the last drop of a drink. Over the next few weeks, similar cases kept happening throughout the town. Goats, chickens, rabbits, dogs, even calves, all became victims. And every single case shared the same characteristics. The blood was drained, the bodies showed no bite marks, and there were no signs of a fight. Terrified, the townspeople gave this unseen demon a name, Chupacabra, which means the goat sucker. The name Chupacabra first appeared in public through a 1995 Puerto Rican TV program called Ocurrió Así. By that time, the story had already begun spreading quietly through the southern towns of the island. The TV station, quick to seize on the sensational topic, invited a woman named Madeline Toledo, who claimed to have seen the Chupacabra with her own eyes. That evening, Madeline was sitting on the wooden deck behind her house, gathering the clothes she had just dried in the sun. Suddenly, she heard frantic flapping coming from the chicken coop. It wasn't the usual commotion. It sounded more like desperate struggle, the kind of cry an animal makes when it senses a predator nearby. Madeline thought maybe a wild dog or a snake had slipped inside, so she grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the coop along the damp, muddy ground. As she got closer, a metallic, blood-like smell filled the air. It was so strong, it made her stomach turn, mixed with the musty scent of wet wood and feathers. Instinctively, she covered her nose with her hand. When she finally reached the coop and shined her flashlight inside, what she saw made her blood run cold. Several hens were lying stiff on the ground, feathers standing on end, their throats punctured with 2 deep holes, as if something sharp had pierced straight through them. A small trickle of blood was still seeping slowly from the wounds. As Madeline trembled and took a hesitant step forward to see more clearly, something moved at the edge of her flashlight beam. For that single moment, the air seemed to freeze. Her hands shaking, she slowly lifted the flashlight and pointed it toward the shadows. What she saw next was beyond anything she could have imagined. In the darkness crouched an unknown creature, its spine arched high, its body covered in short, grayish-brown fur. Its limbs were long and bony, and its head, horrifyingly narrow, had streaks of dried blood at the corners of its mouth. 2 rows of sharp fangs glinted coldly as it breathed. But what truly held her in terror were its enormous, blood-red eyes, so vivid under the flashlight's white beam that they seemed to bleed light. The creature stared directly at Madeline from within the shadows, showing no fear, only calm, predatory indifference. Worse still, it was clutching a half-dead hen tightly in its long, clawed hands. The chicken made faint, pitiful sounds before the creature suddenly snapped its neck with a quick twist. Then Madeline watched in horror as it bent its head down and, with a motion no human could imitate, sank its mouth deep into the hen's throat. It extended a long, spiked tongue and began to suck the blood that poured out. Every move it made was disturbingly calm, yet somehow far more horrifying than any wild animal's savage attack. As she stood frozen, the stories spreading through town rushed back to her mind. The tales of the Chupacabra. And in that moment, she was certain. The creature before her was the very monster everyone had been whispering about. Madeline wanted to run, but a wave of icy terror seized her entire body. It felt as if her blood had turned to ice, her nerves locked in place. She couldn't move, couldn't even breathe properly. All she could do was watch as the Chupacabra finished draining the last hen, then suddenly lifted its head and straightened up, standing upright like a human. For an instant, Madeline thought it was about to attack. She screamed, dropping the flashlight to the ground. But then she saw its clawed toes dig deep into the muddy earth before it leapt high into the air, vaulting over the wall behind her house, disappearing into the night. When silence finally returned, Madeline bent down and picked up her flashlight. As the beam swept across the coop again, she saw dozens of chickens scattered across the ground, their bodies stiff, blood still fresh in places. The only other traces left behind were 3 strange footprints pressed deep into the wet soil, like a curse stamped into the earth. The El Correo Así reporters later turned her story into a 10-minute special segment. The footage replayed the blood-soaked chicken coop, the dead hens, and Madeline's terrified face over and over. The background music was low and eerie, and with the reporter's solemn narration, the entire broadcast created an almost religious sense of dread. At the end of the segment, the camera lingered on those 3 deep, bizarre footprints in the mud. The host, speaking in a slow, deliberate tone, concluded, "Scientists have yet to explain this, but locals are convinced these are the marks of the Chupacabra." Within just 30 minutes of the broadcast, the station's phone lines were flooded with calls. Hundreds of people from all over claimed to have seen the Chupacabra near farms, or heard their livestock screaming in the night before being attacked. Some swore they had seen those same glowing red eyes flickering in the jungle. In just 3 days, nearly every newspaper, radio, and TV outlet on the island was reporting on the Chupacabra. Journalists rushed to the southern countryside, hoping to find new victims, to capture the next lead, to uncover first-hand evidence of the monster. And by then, the name Chupacabra had already grown beyond a rural legend. It had become a nationwide phenomenon. Strangely, as time went on, the frenzy around the Chupacabra began to fade, but its traces didn't disappear. In fact, they began to spread even wider. In 1997, reports of similar incidents started surfacing on ranches in Texas. One evening, a ranch worker discovered several goats and cows lying stiff inside the fence. Their bodies were rigid, their fur standing on end, their eyes wide open, as if they had witnessed something unspeakably terrifying in their final moments. Even more bizarre, their bodies showed no signs of struggle or attack. The wounds were clean and tiny, just 2 small punctures on the throat, and all of their blood had been completely drained. At first, people thought it might be the work of poachers or wild dogs, but as the days passed, more livestock were found dead in exactly the same way. Different farms, different counties, all reporting identical cases. That's when the government realized something unusual was happening. Police officers and veterinarians were immediately dispatched to the scene to photograph the bodies, collect samples, and run analyses. Yet every test result came back the same. No toxins, no external injuries, and no logical explanation. Soon after, local Texas newspapers ran a chilling headline: "The Latin American bloodsucker has crossed the border." The reports pointed out that the bizarre pattern of these attacks was almost identical to the Chupacabra incidents that had shaken Puerto Rico 2 years earlier. Overnight, Americans began to realize that this creature, once thought to be just a Caribbean myth, might not be a myth at all. As the story spread, the media sensed a bigger headline. CNN sent a news crew to the small border towns of southern Texas, while the BBC followed up with its own coverage. Both networks labeled it a cross-border terror. On television, the scenes were haunting. Barren ranch lands illuminated by the flashing lights of police cars, dead livestock scattered across the ground, and an air thick with the smell of decay and iron. Reporters spoke in hushed, tense tones, their disbelief barely hidden. Several residents claiming to be eyewitnesses were also interviewed, and their accounts only deepened the mystery. One said they saw a grayish-brown, short-haired creature running along the roadside, shaped like a dog, but walking upright. Another described its eyes glowing a sinister red under car headlights, as if capable of draining a person's soul. Others swore they heard eerie, baby-like cries echoing through the darkness. Over the following weeks, panic began to spread. Ranchers across southern Texas stopped sleeping soundly. Many set up searchlights, installed makeshift cameras, and reinforced their fences with traps and barbed wire. Some even began arming themselves, and in a matter of days, gun sales surged dramatically. In the midst of all this tension, a Texas farmer claimed he had shot and killed a strange creature on his ranch. The animal, he said, was about the size of something between a dog and a monkey, covered in short grayish-brown fur with long, bony limbs and a row of sharp spines running down its back. Most disturbing of all were its glowing red eyes. Once the news broke, the name Chupacabra once again exploded across headlines. A few days later, the creature's body was sent to a local wildlife center where experts collected samples and transported them to a laboratory for analysis. A week later, the results came back. The DNA tests revealed that the creature was nothing more than an ordinary coyote, one suffering from a severe case of mange. The disease had deformed its body, thickened its skin, and caused inflammation around its eyes. And though its appearance matched the legendary Chupacabra almost perfectly, the sad truth was, this was no monster. When the report was released, the scientific community collectively sighed in relief. From the very beginning, scientists had resisted acknowledging the Chupacabra as real. At the press conference, an expert wearing gloves pointed to the genetic chart on the screen and calmly stated, "The Chupacabra doesn't exist." What people saw was simply the result of natural disease. Yet science has never been able to silence all doubt. Even in the 21st century, the legend of the Chupacabra continues to spread. In 2024, a farmer in Paraná, Brazil, posted a video online showing 3 pigs found completely drained of blood. The puncture wounds on their necks were almost identical to those from the 1995 cases. In the comments under the video, people claimed to have seen the Chupacabra. Others called for a government investigation, and some even shared photos of handmade amulets meant to ward off the creature. Although local police in Brazil concluded that wild dogs were responsible, villagers weren't convinced. They organized nighttime patrols, armed with shotguns and crosses, to protect their farms. So what exactly is this blood-sucking monster that roams the American night? A diseased beast? A failed product of genetic experimentation? Or simply a creation of human imagination? No one has ever found a definitive answer. But one thing is certain: every time the moonlight shines over a silent pasture and livestock are found mysteriously dead, the shadow of the Chupacabra returns once more. Its presence hides in the cracks of dark forests, in blurred witness reports, and deep within humanity's eternal fear of the unknown.